Lesson 7, constant rate of change. I'm on page 65 right now. That's the start of the lesson. And I mentioned in the video to start off with today that as we did the lesson, constant rate of change, what you're going to realize is it's really the same thing as unit rate. So you found unit rate in lesson 1 and lesson 2. And really, you're looking to find it here in this lesson as well, but just new vocabulary. And sometimes that's going to happen. There's some vocabulary that overlap and mean the same. So, for example, besides unit rate and constant rate being the same, the other vocabulary word that we learned in this chapter was proportional. And proportional also is the same thing as unit rate, constant rate, and finding that pattern that we've talked about, whether it's in a table or a graph. So you'll now start to see interchangeably those words used. So it may ask you to find the constant rate of change in the table. You're finding the unit rate is what you're doing. You're finding per one. It may say to you, is this graph proportional? So what it's asking you is, in the graph, do you see a pattern? Do you see the unit rate that's going through the graph to make it proportional? So like I said, you'll start to see those vocab words just start to interchange back and forth with our examples. So I'm actually going to start with you on page 66. And let's talk about tables, constant rates and tables. So they've done the first example for you, and I'm just going to walk through this one for a minute. It says in example 1 that the table shows the amount of money a booster club makes washing cars for a fundraiser. Use the information to find the constant rate of change in dollars per car. So you're trying to find out how much money per one wash. That's what you're looking for. You're trying to see if there's a pattern or at 1, that unit rate, that constant rate, if it's traveling through the table, it has the same pattern through the table. Well, here you can start to see it's $40 for 5 cars washed, $80 for 10 cars, $120 for 15 cars, and $160 for 20 cars. So if I were to take, and I think I'm going to come over here this time and show you $40 for 5 cars. How much is it per one? Per one. Well, 40 divided by 5. That goes in 8 times. So it's $8 per one car. So knowing that, we want to see if that $8 per car is going all the way through that table. So if I were to keep going and I divide out 80 divided by 10 cars, 10 washes, yep, I'm still getting $8 per car. If I did, and you can use your calculator at the same time as I do, if I did $120 divided by 15, I'm going to get $8 per car, and $160 divided by 20 washes, 20 cars, it's $8 per car. And it shows you that right here. Now, they only show you one example of dividing out and finding the constant rate. You should always check all the way through the table. If that's what you're given and you're trying to find what that pattern or constant rate is, you should check every value in the table. There's definitely a possibility that the first 3 might work and the last one doesn't. And so make sure you do check every value. Okay, so let's look at the got it's here. So letter A says, the table shows the number of miles a plane traveled while in flight, and use the information to find the approximate constant rate of change in miles per minute. Miles per minute. You're going to find that constant rate or that unit rate. So I'm going to write over here, constant rate is equal to or the same as unit rate. It means the same thing. Miles per minute, miles per 1 minute per one. And so I'm going to take every value in this table, and you are as well. You're going to use your calculator, and you're going to divide these out with me and see if it works. So if I take, where's the best spot? Maybe over here. The 290 miles and divide that by 30 minutes. I want to know miles per minute, right? So take a second, divide that out. And you should see when you divide it, 9.7 miles per minute. And so I use the slash mark here. Maybe I change that to a different color. Let's see. So the slash mark means the same thing as like a fraction line per one, 9.7 miles per 1 minute. And so sometimes you see it as a fraction, sometimes you see it as this slash. Either way, you're talking per one. So let's try another one. Let's try the next one on the table. And I should say this, when you divide it, I did round this, and I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. It comes out 9.6666, and it just keeps repeating. That 6 just keeps going over and over and over, right? But we need to end that decimal. So if I go nearest tenth, it's 9.7. All right, let's try the next one. So 580, oops, go back to black ink. So 580 divided by 60 minutes, and that's miles and minutes that we're looking at. And see if you get the same thing. 580 divided by 60, divide it out. 9.7 again. And there's my dog. I'm telling you, I can't find peace and quiet in my house ever. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if I can get him to stop barking. Okay, let's try this again. I think I have him quiet for a few minutes. So as I was saying, next one, 580 divided by 60. So that gives me 9.7 miles per minute. Try these last two. So I'm going to come over here just because I'm running out of room. 870 miles per 90 minutes. I need to know per one. And then one more, you're going to divide out the 1,160 miles by 120 minutes. So try both of those. And when you divide, what do you see? You should see, again, 9.7 rounded, right? Because it's 9.66, 9.7 rounded miles per minute. And the same thing here. So I know it seems cumbersome to have to divide all of it out, but you should. You would come across examples at some point, whether it's this year or even next year in 8th grade, that you have to make sure you check them all, because there's definitely times where it won't be. You might find that last value there is not the same and you don't have a constant rate. So whatever table you're given, check the values they give you. So in this case, yeah, every single one is 9.7 miles per minute, which means that is my constant rate, unit rate, my pattern that's going through that table. I'm going to have you try B. So I'll pause the video, see if you can find a constant rate. If there's not a constant rate, you would just say no constant rate. It could happen, like I said. But you try letter B and see what you can find. Pause the video. Okay, so you should have, check your work, divided those out and found 72. It's 72 students per bus. So there's that pattern going all the way through the table, that constant rate of change of 72 students per bus. Okay, so now sometimes you can see it in a graph. And so we're going to come down to the got it right here. And this is on page 67. And you're going to be asked to, besides a table, look at a graph and find a constant rate as well. So letter C says, use the graph to find the constant rate of change in miles per hour while driving in the city. Constant rate of change per 1. And so we're finding that unit rate. So on the table, if this is what you're given, in this case, you're lucky that you have the coordinate points already labeled for you. So what does it say for per 1? 1 hour, how many miles? Looks like 30 to me. It looks like it's falling right between 20 and 40. So in here, in part C, this looks like it is 30, and I'm using the labels on the side of the graph, 30 miles per 1 hour. Right here is what you're looking at. Letter D, on the lines below, explain what the points 0, 0 and 1, 30 mean or represent. Well, at 0, 0, where your graph is starting there, in 0 time, 0 hours, meaning no time has gone by, you have traveled 0 miles. So 0 time, 0 miles traveled. 0 time, 0 miles traveled. And then 1, 30, well, we just saw that in letter C. But understanding what that means, remember 1, this first value is your x value. Look on your x-axis, this is time in hours. In 1 hour, 30 miles. Oops. "30 miles traveled." So being able to read and see a constant rate from a graph. Okay, let's keep going. So the next page we're going to take a peek at is guided practice, and we're going to look at number 1 together. And so in number 1, it says the table and graph below show the amount of money My Ling and Daniel save each week. Who saves more each week? So what it's asking you to do is look at My Ling's savings here in the table and then Daniel's savings in the graph and be able to understand from each one of those what the constant rate or unit rate or per 1 is for each of them. So if I look at My Ling savings here in the table, if I were to find per 1, which means if I did 30 divided by 2, if I did 45 divided by 3, and 60 divided by 4, every time I divide those out, and again, you can check with your calculator, this is $15, and it's per week. So My Ling is making $15 per week, or she's saving $15 per week. If I look at Daniel's savings, I have to be able to understand the unit rate, the constant rate in the graph. So I got to find per 1. I go over to 1 on the x-axis, and I go up to where it connects on the grid, and right here is a coordinate point, and that is saying Daniel in 1 week makes $10. $10 per week. And if I were to look through the graph at the other coordinate points, I should see that pattern of 10. In 2 weeks, he's making 20. In 3 weeks, he's making 30. In 4 weeks, he's making 40. So absolutely, it's increasing by 10 every single time. Well, who saves more money each week? Well, isn't my Ling saving more money? My Ling is saving more than Daniel at $15 per week. There we go. So again, I'm going to have you try some. We're going to pause the video. This will be the last of me going through and teaching the lesson because, like I said, it's very similar to unit rate. You're finding that pattern and you have to do it in a table and a graph. You're going to try some. And then once you pause the video to try these, you'll unpause the video and just check your answers. And then you'll be able to head into BuzzMath for the rest of the hour. So I want you to find on independent practice, page 69, I want you to do number 1. I want you to do number 2. I want you to do number 3. And I want you to do number 4. So 1 through 4, they're exactly very similar to the examples I just did with you. Pause, work those out, and then check your answers. Okay, here are your answers to check. End of the lesson on to BuzzMath for the rest of the hour. See you tomorrow. Or Monday. See you Monday.